Good morning, everybody, and welcome. First of all, I'd like to thank Glenn Dreadhart and the team from Mining and Exploration News and the CENCAN for putting on such a wonderful show. This is now the fourth year, and it's grown fantastically over the years, and we're seeing companies not only from other parts of Ontario and Canada, but the States and the world as well. So the world is looking at Northern Ontario and Ontario, so thank you very much. The overlying message that I want to get to companies is permitting does not have to be a difficult, onerous task. Okay, I worked for the Ministry of Mines for a long time, and there is a template that works. One that you can get off the internet, but other ones that you can work with the Ministry of Mines or MNRF or MECP to get through the process with as little red tape, a reasonable amount of time, and a reasonable amount of cost. I have never met anybody that knows the Mining Act better than the people in terms of the regulators. So the suggestions that they will give to you are going to be invaluable. And that could be for early exploration, that could be for advanced exploration, that could be for mine construction, that could be for mine expansion, mine closure, environmental assessments, or any of the permits that you're going to be applying for. So just a little bit about myself. I retired from the Ministry of Mines after a long career a couple years ago and have started up my own exploration company or consulting company servicing Northern Ontario and other parts. What we're going to talk about today is the background on the new mineral recovery permits. The Mining Act, up until most recently, was not designed for small or medium scale mining. It was made for opening up a large scale operation. And as it was said, in other parts of the world, I've had clients from South Africa, I've had clients from Australia that I've relied on to put a plan in place to help those companies exploit abandoned mines or former operations, many of them that closed decades ago, that their processing was very inefficient. Old stamp mills were not very efficient. The new mills today, they're running at about 90, 92, 93%. Some of the stamp mills are running at 50 to 70%. I was fortunate enough to talk to mill operators who worked in that time that would say they'd get a jam in the line, and they would literally be using high pressure hoses and crowbars and sledgehammers and blowing visible gold out into the tailings pond and never actually recovering it. We don't have to talk anymore about what the prices are. Over $5,000 an ounce today. The foundation to any natural resource project is Indigenous consultation. It takes experience, it takes the right person. Your technical people oftentimes are, because a geologist on the ground is responsible for everything. Worthwhile taking a look at bringing somebody on, even on a contract basis, who may have connections in that area and have a lot of experience. Okay, so there are some basic steps to this new application. We're also going to talk just a little bit about some of the companies around here in Northwestern Ontario or Thunder Bay that will add value to the project as well. And there are some definite pitfalls, and when I talk about secret steps and how to avoid them, follow the template, plug in and play. You're definitely going to have some very unique situations because of your company or your property that you're going to have to add to that, but don't reinvent the wheel. So, as it says, the Ontario government has introduced new legislation that would make it easier to recover residual metals and minerals from mine waste to unlock potential economic value. So for years, I sat with companies that wanted to take a look at an old mine site, but the Mining Act was so cumbersome because you needed a closure plan. You needed federal and provincial environmental assessment. You needed tens of millions of dollars in financial assurance. Once you took a look at what the expenses were, it was just not feasible. Okay? So we're not only talking about tailings, there's oftentimes millions of tons of waste rock on a site as well. So the ministry's goals and they should be, is to facilitate consultation and partnerships between the Indigenous communities, government, and industry. I have never met in my 40-year career in dealing with Indigenous communities one that said that they weren't interested in partnering and developing the economic opportunities. The key to it is early engagement, early communication, sharing the wealth. Thank you. Okay. We can also see that 98% of all the exploration and 98% of all the production in northwestern Ontario has been gold, but not limited to. We're looking at projects of copper, nickel, cobalt, zinc, silver. Okay. This is a great opportunity to remediate sites that have been abandoned for decades. So not only are you going to go in and remediate a property, or partially, but you're going to extract the value with your Indigenous partners. Okay? And it has already started to encourage outside companies from other parts of the world who are contacting us to say, do you have a project for us? Or do you have a team that can help us with our project? Now there's some exemptions, uranium projects, okay? There are going to be some areas that are withdrawn from development, okay? But the real opportunity is this amendment was started to talk about when I was still with the ministry, because there was companies time and time again, especially when the price of gold had risen dramatically, that said we would like to do some small-scale mining. I got to give credit to the government to be able to do consultation and to be able to put this, do the change to the act for this to be allowed. Okay? It's really the first time in Canada, but other provinces and territories are looking to see how this is going to work in Ontario. Okay? One of them came about, as many of you know, from the red tape reduction that was done, where many of the duplications in the Mining Act were streamlined. Okay? As I mentioned, small-scale mining. Okay? Stellar and Timmins, Fulcrum Minerals in Kirkland Lake have fantastic projects. Mines that had run for 50 years, millions of tons of waste rock and tailings. Are we talking about tens of thousands of ounces? Are we talking about hundreds of thousands of ounces? Or are we talking about millions of ounces? Okay, the federal government is also behind the scenes taking a look at and trying to align themselves with this type of new initiative. Okay. So why is this a golden opportunity? As I mentioned, 98% of the historic mines in northwestern Ontario were gold and are gold. Okay. Talked about opportunities for copper, zinc, silver, and cobalt and other minerals. Okay. These are just in northwestern Ontario what our team has identified as low-hanging fruit. Okay. This is eastern and southern Ontario. Okay? Gold price is astronomical, and it's expected to go even higher. Okay? As I mentioned, some of the historic smelting and processing methods were extremely inefficient. We believe that we can go in and process the tailings and the waste rock in a very inefficient and environmentally friendly way with our Indigenous partners on numerous projects and numerous gold camps. Okay. Some of the lower concentration ore was not viable previously, but at $5,000 an ounce, it is. And remember, this is not an open pit. This is not an underground shaft. This is on the surface. What we are finding is, on some of the tailings ponds, there are trees, there are other organic matter. And some of those, over a period of time, have sucked up some of the gold-bearing minerals in them themselves. Indigenous partnerships, the key. And you'll hear me say this time and time and time again. Okay? Go beyond the duty to consult and accommodate. Okay? All mining in Ontario takes place on the traditional lands of one or more Indigenous communities. Okay? Ask the ministry for a predetermination of the Indigenous communities you'll be required to consult with. Now, there is one flaw that I've identified, or we've identified, with the staking process. If you go on the Mining Lands Information System and you stake one claim, the system assumes that you're going to automatically be opening up a mine. What you want to do is, when you get that staking notification, you want to go back to the ministry and you want to say, at early expiration, at low impact, you've sent me 6 communities, but at early expiration, who is this application going to be sent to? That's the very first step you want to do, and the ministry is attempting to address that right now. I've seen at different times in my career that companies had reached out as soon as they got their staking notification to a community that they're wondering why they're contacting them. Couple of pitfalls. As I mentioned, failing to consult early on in the process. And that may be even before you stake. So you generally are doing potentially some activities that don't require a permit or a plan. You know, those could be geological mapping, that could be soil sampling, you know, that could be taking grab samples. Find out who the communities are based upon a map that you can provide to the government. They have a wealth of resources, and they want to know as early as possible who's on the ground in their traditional territory. Okay? It's all about getting your partners on side, and your first partners are the Indigenous communities. Okay? So the Indigenous partnerships and the opportunities. Okay? Communities can provide labor. Many of the communities have been heavily involved in the exploration and mining business for decades. They're experts on the ground that you're coming into, and I can tell you, having spent 40 years in the bush, I tell you, it's nice to have somebody that knows how to run a boat and a snow machine and an ATV and can fix and works good in cold weather and in wet weather and bugs and whatever else it may be. Many of them have mining service and supply companies or exploration companies already set up that can provide you with camps, can provide you with a backhoe, a pump, a hose, people to log core. Okay? Oftentimes, through the Mining Act and other acts, there is money available when you partner with an Indigenous person or a community to help pay for some of your early or advanced expenses. So what you can expect, okay? Expect to meet in the communities on their land. Go to the community, take your time, get to know the community, get to know the elders, get to know the trappers, get to know the land users in the areas that you're going to be working in or potentially going to be working in. It will pay astronomical benefits, okay? The first meeting should be a meet and greet. You're not necessarily talking about business, you're talking about becoming friends, building trust. Okay? Find out their needs, their wants, their concerns, and their expectations. Okay? So there may be an area that's close to your community or to your project that could be a burial ground, could be a ceremonial site, could be going on top of somebody's trap line. You want to find out who that trapper is and work with them. Work towards a formal agreement. More so now than ever, First Nations and Indigenous communities are asking for an early expiration agreement. And they're more than fair. They want to know that they're going to benefit somehow in the development of the property, even at early expiration. They want to know if there's any contracts available for drilling, for helicopters, because often, or camps or something like that. Oftentimes they have a joint venture set up with a company already that's going to benefit your company, especially if you're not familiar with the geographic area that you're in. So just some of the permit steps for the small-scale mining recovery of minerals. Okay, the application process A pre-submission meeting with the ministry. I see a number of my colleagues here from the Ministry of Mines that I worked with. There is a wealth of information that the Ministry of Mine has from the Mineral Exploration Development Department, from the Resident Geologist Department, from the Mining Rehab Department. And here's what's interesting, is that there's a lot of information online, but in Ontario there's over 100,000 files of hard copy information, many of which have been donated over the years that is not online, that we're attempting each summer to put online. And there are some great gems there. There could be maps, there could be LiDAR surveys, there could be aerial photography, there could be MAG and VTEM surveys, there could be geological reports. I had a client at one time taking a look at an old abandoned mine site. The mining engineer that closed it out in the 90s still lived at the same address that they did in the 60s. She was able to get a hold of him, and he had 40 archive boxes of material from that site, including underground prints. Now, am I going to say that's going to happen all the time? No, but building a relationship with the ministry representatives, no matter where you are, is going to, and oftentimes they can refer you to people who have worked on that property, not only from the government, but from industry, to save you a lot of time and effort. So one of the pitfalls is skipping that optional meeting. Here's the other thing. This is a dramatic change in the Mining Act, okay? Learn together with your ministry representatives in your Indigenous communities, okay? There are no wrong questions, okay? There are no limitations on the number of times you phone somebody. They're like your insurance agent, to be able to phone and ask questions and have them send you information. Okay? Talked to the Ministry of Energy and Mines early in the process. Basically networking with the Ministry of Mines to help you get on the radar, to help them target so they can help you with identifying First Nations and identifying information that's going to help you with your project. Okay? They'll identify red flags or hurdles that you don't know about. Okay? You really want to outline your plan as much detail as possible, including, maps are so important. A regional scale map, a project scale map. Remember, a lot of the people that you're dealing with are not technical people, especially in the community and other parts of the government. In your Indigenous communities, we're all visual. The most important thing, the first conversation I have with a client is, we're going to do some world-class maps. Okay? Treat the meetings as a spree screening and not necessarily a fact-finding mission. That's going to develop over time. You get to know who you're going to be assigned to. They're going to get to know you. Okay? The ministry screens your application for completeness, and they will, within a very short period of time, get back to you to say, this is missing. Doesn't say it in the guidelines, but this is the best case scenario. Okay? It'll go on the environmental registry. It'll be circulated to the Indigenous communities. And hopefully by then, you've already made a relationship with, so you can follow up with them on the formal paperwork. Okay, the minister will decide and may add terms and conditions. There are some communities, for an example, that we deal with that would like no work to be done in the month of October for a traditional moose hunt in areas, or in the springtime for a goose hunt. Okay? Financial assurance may be required based upon your project itself. So another one is misunderstanding the regulations. Okay? The mineral recovery permit does not exempt projects from other provincial and federal requirements. So although this is a Ministry of Mines initiative, there will be MNRF that's going to be involved. There is going to be MECP involved in that. You need to build the relationships with them as well. Okay? Other government regulations still apply. Something that we're finding is that although the MNRF and MECP are aware of this, they haven't had a lot of consultation done internally about it. So you're going to be working and learning with them as well. You'll find out what office you're dealing with, and they'll assign you an officer. Okay? There are going to be some things, some of these old mine sites, you're going to have to put a road into, you're going to have to put a water crossing in, you're going to have to put a culvert in. Okay? We talked about Indigenous consultation on those types of permits as well. In the odd case, you may be dealing with the Department of Fisheries, which are federal, or Environment Canada. Okay? Processing. There are so many different ideas about how we're going to process these tailings and waste rock. Okay? Gold milling can be really tricky. Okay? It's not a one-size-fits-all. As it was mentioned, Australia and South Africa have been doing small-scale mining and recovering tailings and waste rock for decades. They're the experts. That's the people that we're working with in the instance where we're going to look at a portable mill of 250 to 500 tons a day. They're light years ahead of everyone else. Okay? Potentially, you could be a toll miner for somebody else. Somebody in your area that has a project, they're looking to process. Can you partner with them? Smaller on-site mills, custom milling in Timmins and Sudbury and other places are available. Okay? That's just some of the technology that's out there in the world, a closed-loop system. Okay? Potentially, custom milling from a full-scale mining operation. There has been active mines in Red Lake, in Marathon, in Timmins, in Sudbury, that do process other people's concentrate or waste rock. So one of the things is start planning early. Okay? One of the real pitfalls is trying to do it yourself. You can't be all things to all people. Okay? We believe that we've assembled a team right from day one, right to the point of production. Okay? Decades of experience, insights into historic sites, navigating provincial and federal regulations, okay? Decades of Indigenous consultation and partnerships and working towards agreements, okay? Connections in other mining services through a network of partners, okay? I just want to recognize a few companies that we work with here today that we've put on our team. One of them is Kurt Boyko from Nordman Engineering, who we believe is a top firm for anything to do with processing. Bar Engineering out of Sudbury, Calgary, the States, and whatever else, other that are world-class in dams and water treatment. RWDI, Thompson Environmental, AGAT Labs, and we believe that we've got the team together to help you. If you're looking for a project, or if you've got a project that you need some assistance with, please take the time to sit down with us and we'll give you your suggestions. Thank you very much.